Thank you all for being here, making sure that my phone is silenced. Welcome all to the artist talks of the Women in Mural Art Building Careers program. I need to find my voice. What, where is it? My name is Marta Keller Hernandez. It's coming. And I am the managing director at Mural Routes. It is truly a pleasure to be here with all of you today. I don't think like this actually emphasizes how thrilled I am that that I'm here with you guys today. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge this land on which we are gathered. For thousands of years, this land has been the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. The territory of what is known today as Toronto is under the One Dish, One Spoon, One Pond Belt, a peace treaty between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe, and is a mutual agreement between nations for sharing land and resources. The territories that encompass Toronto as well are under a number of treaties, including Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. We're truly grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. Mural Routes also acknowledges the many people of African descent who are not settlers, but whose ancestors were forcibly displaced as part of the transatlantic slave trade, brought against their will and made to work on these lands. So for those of you who are not familiar with Mural Routes and what we do, we are the only charitable art service organization in Canada dedicated to the development of the mural art field. We activate communities by facilitating the creation of responsive collaborative murals and provide opportunities to build and advance careers in mural art, like the one that brings us here today. Mural Roots and Eastern Arts are thrilled to present Women in Mural Art Building Careers, curated by artists Fia Brusha and Fats Patrol, who you'll get to meet later today. This is an opportunity for mural artists and mural art enthusiasts in Canada to hear, learn, and network with established women mural artists working on an international scale. Also, please note that the term women is used here for shorthand, and that our project includes all female identifying and gender marginalized people. Today, we're hosting a full day of artist talks and panel discussion with guest artists Lauren Y.S., Agana, Hera, Shellac Attack, and Igor. Lauren Y.S., Agana, and Hera will each present about their individual practice, creative process, and relevant topics affecting their mural art career. Their presentations will be followed by a Q&A for participants to ask questions. Later in the day, these artists will be joined by Canada-based artists Shellac and Igor and program curators Fats Patrol and Fia Brusha in a panel discussion. The panel will delve deeper into current issues of the mural street art industry from their own lived experience. Women in Mural Art would not be possible without the generous support of our community partners, Eastern Arts and Salt Pepper Theatre Company. We would also like to thank the Canada Council for the Arts for providing the funding for this particular program, and our operating funders, the Toronto Arts Council and the Ontario Arts Council, for their ongoing support. Also, we wanted to give a shout out to Fred Victor and Friends Catering, who will be providing lunch. Their mission is to provide on-the-job training for individuals in the community who are experiencing substantial barriers to finding employment. They work with individuals who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, newcomers, individuals re-entering the workforce facing barriers to employment, and individuals living with addiction and mental health issues. So thanks so much. And before I present our first guest speaker, I have a couple of housekeeping announcements. We will start with Lauren Y.S. presentation, followed by Agana's presentation. We will then break for lunch, which will be provided, and then we will reconvene for Hera's presentation, followed by the panel discussion. This event is being live streamed and recorded for archival purposes, so hi to those watching online, and will be shared on Mural Routes' website later on. Also, and although I'm usually the face that people see, we have a very mighty team at Mural Routes, board and staff, who takes care of all the behind the scenes and contribute in various capacities to the overall success of every program and project we undertake. We have Kim Damon there at the back, Program and Project Coordinator, here today. Karen Sidhu, Marketing and Development Coordinator, and Jackie Santos, who couldn't be here today, who's our Tech Lead and Membership Coordinator. If you have any questions, please feel free to connect with any of us. Also, Devon and Eric are also helping out today with, like the tech, making sure that everything runs smoothly, the timing, all of that. All gender bathrooms are located down the hall. You're also welcome to stand up, use the space as needed. This is a DIY space, you can tell. So, like if you need to access refreshments or to stretch, but just like please do so like, discreetly so that, we don't bother too much the guest speakers. We would also appreciate if you could turn your cell phones to silent. And if you need to answer a call or, just need some quiet time, there are some soundproof phone booths on site as well, like down the hall. So feel free to use those as well. And without further ado, let me introduce Lauren Y.S. If I manage to, thank you. Lauren Y.S. is a Los Angeles-based artist whose work is influenced by multiple stages of focus, both geographically and in practice. I'm like, where's Lauren? Okay. Carrying a BA in English and Fine Art from Stanford University, Lauren applies their dynamic boots in academics, literature, illustration, comics, and animation to the urban art sphere as a queer Asian American femme with a deep passion for visual storytelling. Their signature style of high chroma design elements interwoven with dynamic portraiture creates lush, florid pictorial portals to worlds that are just as they are visual captivating. Lauren's work seeks to bring an element to the fantastical and narrative fluidity to the dignity of their characters' personhoods, with a specific passion for creating space for queer and mixed-race stories. From large-scale murals to multi-layered works on canvas, Lauren's work draws inspiration from queer worlds, non-binary identities, mythology, dreams, psychedelia, animation, cybernetic organisms, travel, nature, human dignity, metaphysical wanderings, and their mixed Asian American heritage. Lauren's vision encapsulates the lifetime search for identity and selfhood, a love of local myth, and the constant pursuit of promoting conversations about selfhood and just futures. So the presentation is titled Journeying, with a focus on activism, gender, selfhood, and process in mural art. So please join me in welcoming Lauren.
Thank you so much. Okay. I need to edit that down. So nice to meet you all. So happy to be here. I'm Lauren. I just realized yesterday that I have been in Toronto before and painted a mural here, I think like 7 years ago. I was like, it's my first time in Toronto. Not true. Happy to be back. I am just gonna go through this. I tried to make a new slideshow for y'all, so it's a little bit updated and like separated into sections. Hopefully it works out, but please like keep your minds open for questions. And I'm an open book, really. I'm excited more to like have a conversation with y'all afterwards. But yes, here we go. This is a very serious photo of me. Okay, so I decided, I wanted to like sort of start at the beginning of how I like began my career and became a visual artist. I've always been an illustrator. I studied art and creative writing in college. And so I initially wanted to be a graphic novelist. So like narrative has always been an important undertone to my work. But then after I graduated, I got obsessed. Well, I'd always been a street art fan. And how it happened, I was walking on the street in San Francisco. I had I was like an unpaid intern in like 7 different places after college. And then I saw someone painting a mural for the first time in my life, and that person happened to be Nightjose, if you know his work. And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I want to do that. I want to get in a giant machine and do that. And I became friends with him, and he kind of took me out painting trains, painting graffiti. And I kind of just picked it up from there and just pretended like I knew what I was doing for like, 3 years. And then after like 3 or 4 years, I finally felt like I knew what I was doing. And that's like the short story of that, how I began. And that was the first time I had picked up spray paint as well. So I think in the beginning for me, like figuring out my voice, which is I guess like the biggest challenge for any person like starting out painting murals, is just like working through what I wanted to say. And I think the cool thing about muralism is that you get to kind of express what you're going through in your life if you're painting often enough. And so often like artists' work is very like autobiographical. And so looking through my old work to make this, I was like I had to like rethink, go through all the things that I had gone through as like a young person, as a young girl at the time. So these are kind of the things that I'm always thinking about: placemaking, mythology, research, character design, improvisation, and freehanding. So y'all are lucky I don't actually show these that often because I don't like them, but these are like really, really early murals of mine. Clearly I was really into anime in the beginning. I've always have been. This first one's actually a collaboration with my friend Tatiana, but this is sort of what my work looked like in the beginning. And my Nichos, who's like, I guess I consider him my mentor at the time, like he's a really old school graffiti guy. And so he always impressed upon me the importance of freehanding, which is no projectors, no grids, no like doodle grids or whatever, which was really hard for me in the beginning. Again, there's a lot of murals that are way worse than this that I'm not going to show you. But that's something that's always been really important to my ethos and also my process. And over the years has made it more fun for me to paint because I'm very, very connected to the process and like understanding I find that most people's questions about muralism is like, how do you deal with proportions and how do you figure out how to blow that stuff up so big? And my answer is that it's a lot easier than you think if you work at it. But being tied into the freehanding process is the main answer to that. And understanding spatial recognition and like knowing your style so well that you can just, and Hera's amazing at this, like knowing your style so well that you can just like blow it up in your own mind is like very, very important to me. It's more fun. If I had to use a projector, I feel like it would rob me of part of that process. Yeah, some older pieces. And you can see I'm thinking about mythology a lot. I love mythology, so I'm looking at like Artemis, Squid Girls. Clearly my name came from something to do with that. There's a piece in Australia. I was thinking a lot about like, you know, my role coming into the world as a young femme person, and like if I'm telling a story about the world, who do I want to put at the helm of that story? So I'm always painting like young, strong femme characters the way like Miyazaki does, for example. Because I think, you know, growing up, I didn't see, like if you're at the helm of a story, we've always seen stories where there's like white men at the front, or like telling a story about an American past. It's always about like the plight of the white man. And so I'm like, if my murals are a screenshot into like the story that I want to tell about the world, who's in the lead and what is it about? It's about friendship. It's about like taking on bad guys and like showing Asian femmes as something more than just like ornamental. This is something I painted in a school in Nepal, and a piece in Peru. And the sort of backstories behind these are really funny because like even before I started doing like queer artwork, people constantly thought I was doing queer artwork even when I wasn't. So like this one in Peru, for example, the locals, some of them were a little bit like, I heard them talking because I speak Spanish, but they didn't know that. And they were upset that like some of them thought that I was painting lesbians, which I do sometimes, but in this one I actually wasn't. It's called hermandad, which means sisterhood. And at the time I was quite young and I was upset and I was like, I want them to like it, you know, I'm leaving them something here. I don't want them to be upset. But the organizers were like, we brought you here for this reason because you know, the things that you paint are a little bit like out there. And we're excited for you to leave something that you meant, even though, you know, it might be misconstrued. And so I used to get really up in my head about that kind of thing. And now I've learned that like, I need to trust what I have to say. Sometimes more than I think. Like sometimes the people who are bringing you around like trust you more than you trust yourself. And like over the years, solidifying your trust in what you have to say is takes a lot of work. You know, it takes a lot of work to put your stuff on a wall really large scale. I used to be afraid to even like let people watch me draw in my sketchbook. So every single mural has like a funny backstory that you kind of forget about until you put it on a screen. Now I paint really gay stuff intentionally. That's just a truck that I actually went painting trucks in Mexico with my friend Nichos, and like now I'm like, you have to understand context and places where to paint things and where you can paint them and where you can't. So this is just like painting for free on the street. Wouldn't paint that on everything, but super fun and like really cool, fun stuff. I'm looking at local mythology. This is based off of like the myth of La Catrina in Mexico. And then if you paint often enough, you start seeing these themes arrive in your work. And this is what I talk about when I'm talking about developing a personal style. In the beginning, you're not going to know what you're doing or what you want to do. But if you paint enough, like it starts to come out and like your color palette starts to emerge. And like it's almost this like beast that is like has more like knows itself better than you know it. So I started doing this weird bottle series. And I think I was like trying to encapsulate like an entire microcosm within one mural. Because a lot of times, different artists will have like, we're doing a snapshot or we're doing like a cropped view into a world. And I wanted to be able to paint an entire world that had like edges that you could see. And so I got really obsessed with this concept and started doing them. Again, this one I got in trouble. The sketch, the like mayor of Antelope Valley saw this sketch and was like, they're painting lesbians. And I was like, hey, just wait. Just happens a lot. Yeah, hockey player in Colorado, always trying to like put a piece of like personal experience into a piece, or like you try to find the node of connection that you have into a space. And like I grew up in Colorado, I played hockey. Like Colorado people love hockey, so if you don't care about it, it's not going to be fun to paint. And so always finding something that you care about that's connected to the space is something you want to do, or at least me. This one I did in Chinatown in LA. This is one of my favorite ones. I think I like did really well with the color and trying to subdue it. I'm usually very like, all the color is super saturated, but I'm trying to figure out how to pull back a little bit. This one I did in Kyoto, Japan. It's one of my favorites, I think, because my work is so influenced by Japanese visual culture in general. Growing up, like getting to paint in Japan and like Japan and China, you'll see like I feel very at home in those spaces. And so getting to paint there where like the visual culture is already locked into what's already happening in my brain all the time, I tend to like do my best work in Asia, I found. And this is based off of the Great Wave, what's his name? You know what I'm talking about. But A Dream of the Fisherman's Wife, like the really OG Edo period painting of a girl having sex with an octopus. I did my version of that because I guess I've been waiting my whole life to do that in Japan. Pieces in Mexico, different pieces in Mexico talking about different types of mythology in Mexico. La Mujer Nahual, and then this one's for Pangea Seed, who does work surrounding ocean issues. Yeah, and just like doing a lot of character design and having fun with it. Another one of these bottle pieces. And this is kind of where I get into like talking about themes of identity and gender through figuration. And so for me, like I was really into Donna Haraway's Cyborg manifesto in college, which is like a queer theory surrounding the idea of the body as monstrous and talking about like fluid identities and gender and whatnot. And I kind of took that in a visual form and was like, cool, we'll talk about that by talking about like painting spider girls and like lizard girls and things, and being like these things that people find creepy or like misunderstood can speak more towards like the body as something that's mixed or fluid and misunderstood in a good way. This is a piece I did in China based off of the moon goddess Chang'e. Anytime I get to paint in China is really exciting because I'm half Chinese and I'm really into Chinese mythology. Some cool machete twins painted in a rum distillery in Colombia. Hera was there as well, one of the weirdest trips I've ever been on. Some indoor pieces. I did this in a family home. It's like a depiction of their daughter. And then this is at the Chinese American Museum. And this is more towards where I'm getting into talking about heritage and what sort of happened within the Asian community over the past couple of years. But I depicted, this is my gay Chinese elder, Peter Lai, who lives in LA. And I think there's something really strong and important about wanting to give my elders like their flowers while they're still around. And Peter's been living in Little Tokyo in LA for like decades now. And I think he should be famous. And so I really wanted to paint him. Another example of like character design. I think after I painted this one, I was like, oh yeah, I totally know like sort of what my characters want to look like at this time. And that took like 7 or 8 years to get there. So I think, you know, if you're into character design, this is something that you spend a lot of time trying to figure out what to do. And then when you do it, you get really happy. Just some like more fun ones. I also like love painting for my friends. I just did this for my friend on the side of her house. Sometimes the pieces that you paint that you're not getting paid for your friends are like the most fun ones. This is one of my favorite pieces of mine that I got to do in Osaka. Again, when I paint in Asia, my brain like explodes because it's so excited. This is talking about the like the history of the female samurai, which is largely unknown. Yeah, and it's really hard to paint in Japan, so I felt very lucky that I ended up there, like during cherry blossom season when this wall happened to be unoccupied. And the locals really liked it. They asked me to paint this sparrow on the character's shoulder because I think the street is named after sparrows in Japanese. And so when you're there, this is what I want to talk more about this when I talk about process, but like freestyling on the spot and being able to like work things into the piece that you find once you get there is really important and really fun because you don't know what a space is going to be like until you get there. And I think that people who are a little bit more like staid in their process, like you can't imagine something for a space in Puerto Rico if you've never really been there. You can, but once you get there, you might be like, oh, I'm really inspired by this thing, this thing, this thing. And like being able to pull that into the work is like one of the most beautiful things you can do. I know Hera's really good at that. I'm sweaty. All right, this is one of my more recent ones I did in Beaumont, Texas. Now I'm at a point where I'm like unabashedly painting lesbians. I'm painting lesbians in Texas because I really wanted to. And I will paint lesbians in any town in Texas that anybody wants me to want to continue doing it. We had a dinner with crawfish at that place, and so I was like, I want to paint a giant crawfish. Everyone paints giant crocodiles. Everyone wants to paint horses and stuff. So I was like, I'm just gonna do like this weird little guy, blow it up really big, pay attention to what it looks like, figure out like how to stylize it, and then do queer representation on top of that. Okay, now is the point where I attempt to explain how I do this. I was looking for like a time lapse video. I couldn't really find one, and the other thing about the way I work is that it happens so fast that I often forget to take photos, and then I go into a different universe when I'm painting. It's like a time warp thing, and then it's just like there. And I'm trying to get better at documenting because the world just wants to see documentation, but I'm like too old for that now. I'm like, I have to paint and document it. Fine. But sometimes I go back and there's like photos I took where I'm trying to figure out like what looks wrong. So I try to do this now because I think that's the most important thing, like the most interesting thing for a lot of people. Okay. So I'm looking at a piece I just did in Denver, Colorado. And to explain basically my process, this piece on the left is just my SketchUp of it that I do on Procreate on my iPad. This one's really messy. Not all of them are this messy, not all of them are this clean. But that's like the basic mock-up I did. And I was like, okay, I want to know there's a character in the middle, and then there's going to be these other characters floating around. And I didn't have enough time to like plan it that well yet, but I know this shape basically. And then I just go to the wall and then I draw it. That's literally how it works. I'm using like a very like small grid on the wall that I'm using basically to like sector it up in my mind. And then once you kind of think about it that way and like try not to like let the size of the wall freak you out, that's like enough you need for at some point. And so I know the face is gonna go here, these arms go here, and like it's a little bit sketchy, like it looks pretty rough, but everything you know is there at first. And then I'm going in and fixing things up. Generally, like I think I start with the face most of the time because that's where you want to put the most energy because that's like what humans connect to. And then around it, you kind of know where everything lands. You can see I like messed up the knee here. And then I'm starting to buff in the base colors. This wall gets a lot of sun. And so I wanted there to be like a strong base coat of latex acrylic so that like the wall doesn't suck up all the spray paint. And that's, you know, a good workout. And then it looks like this. Basically just like laying in midtones, like highlights, lowlights with spray paint once you have the main base down. I forgot that I wanted to paint a sun behind the character until later, and so I put that in afterwards. And this is like what's fun about freestyling or like being so involved with the piece, is that you can make these decisions and shift as you go through it. I think not all artists work this way, but I'm so like invested in like the freestyle process that you kind of have like freedom to change things around as you go. And with this piece, like, I'll talk about activism a little bit more after this, but like this piece, I love painting Easter eggs. Like every little detail has something to do with like a greater subtext. And so like there's Chinese lettering on the hat that speaks towards, there was a riot in 1881 in Denver, Colorado, where a lot of Chinese folks were murdered. Not a lot of people know about it. And they didn't apologize for it really until like last year, like basically 100 years later. And I care a lot about the history of the Chinese American experience in America, especially in like the city I grew up in. And so if someone like Googles that date, it'll come up, and like hopefully it'll get people to think a little bit more about the history of the land that they're on. But I try to do that a little bit for people who like pay attention. Not everyone does, but and then it's sort of their characters from the Chinese zodiac, and then it's sort of also a gesture where my mom, who worked really hard to raise me as an immigrant family in Colorado. So that's the final piece. Yeah. That's how big it is, as you could tell. It was really, really fun. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about activism as we move forward. Is everyone okay? Is people falling asleep? Okay, great. Pulse check. Okay, I was not born an activist. I also didn't really care about what was happening in the world until like the last 7-8 years, because I love fantasy. Like I'm an artist. I was like, I don't care. I just want to make cool stuff, my whole life. And then there's a point in your adulthood where you like realize that you have a platform and you have a voice and you have a giant stage that you're on and you're representing people who are like you. And also you need to have purpose to do this job. You have to care about it. And after a while, I was kind of like, how much gas do I have to just paint cool stuff when all of a sudden you're in a world where people are getting murdered who look like your mom or your grandpa? And so I didn't ever choose really to become an activist. I still don't know if I really identify as one. But I think that what has been happening over the last several years kind of like came straight to my doorstep, and was directly related to me. And I realized that like looking back, there were things I was always doing, talking about feminism and like strength and representation, that kind of made me feel like I had a responsibility to use my voice. And so that's something I feel like I'll be leaning into for the rest of my life. But it sort of began after my grandparents passed away. And so this is a portrait I did of them in Honolulu in Chinatown, where I partly grew up there. And after they passed away, I'm a second generation half Chinese person and always felt quite like westernized. But when they passed, I felt this strong urge to like become more connected to my Chinese heritage. And so my artwork is my only real node to that at the moment, or like since then. And that's me and my popo. And she used to come and paint with me every year in Hawaii. And so everybody in that festival knew her. I miss her a lot. So I think a lot of the process of what I do is in reverence to my grandparents and the people I come from. This is a piece I did in a labor union in Sacramento. It's always fun to like do your like own revisionist American history. So I think it's very, psychedelic, Rosie the Riveter. This is a weirder one. Another Pangea seed piece that talks about the health of the kelp system in Santa Cruz. I love these projects because they allow me to do anthropomorphization of characters and talk about like environmentalism through like monster characters. So at first you're like, I don't understand what is happening in this mural, but if you like do the research and like talk about it more, I'm talking about like there's anthropomorphized sea urchin character, there's anthropomorphized tiger shark character, and then we're talking about trying to eat more urchins to like regenerate the health of the kelp system. And so I get to do cool, fun, monstrous characters that also have a narrative beneath. And then I love Trey, who runs this festival, because he always gives me a lot of creative freedom. And so when I'm like, I want to do like a sea urchin gimp character, he's like, do it. So I love projects like this. And also, Santa Cruz is a place that likes this kind of art. I wouldn't do this necessarily everywhere. I wouldn't have space necessarily everywhere. But because it's like a skater punk culture place, you can kind of feel it when you're painting and you're like, oh, I can throw this in. I can't, like, this will be accepted here. You hear people being like, hell yeah, you know, gimp, shark, lady, dope. You're like, all right, I can keep going. Another example of a Pangesi project about plastic recycling. This was a fun take on the whole bottle series in Boston. And this is an example of when you have like a concept going and you take it, you kind of cross section it with the other concept you're dealing with. Like if I'm doing this weird bottle series and then crossing it with Chinese American history, you get like a really weird piece like this. But I like that because because you're like, oh, that's very me, even if it doesn't like actively make sense in the first look. So this one is in Sacramento, where, as I learned while I was doing research there, there was the beginning of the Transcontinental Railroad, which, as we all hopefully know, also in Canada. Well, you have your own version. The Chinese American and immigrant population lost a lot of people building this railroad that connected the entire country together. And so like literally being in the place where it began, and also like the first Chinatown in the country is very close to Sacramento. I was like, I want to do a piece on this so that like as a gesture towards the immigrant populations there. So it's called We Built the Tracks We Travel On, in homage to that. But my job is just to like try to make it look like history cool, because it's not. It's really dark and like scary and rough. But I think trying to figure out how to like talk about these characters and talk about the history of something very bloody is really important and fun. And they didn't ask me to do that. It's just something I'm like passionate about. And it's crazy that Canada has like the basically the same like situation going on. I would be down to paint something about that at some point. Here's a pride mural that I did a few years ago. That's my one of my partners. I got an opportunity to do something for West Hollywood, and they gave me full creative reign, and I was like, I want to represent queer gender fluid people of color, because we don't see that many people like that in murals or in media, and murals are media. And if I have a world inside my head, like who's populating it and who gets to like represent that space. And so this is something that I'm working on a little bit more in my work. So all of these people are real. That's not always true of my work, but it incorporates like Alok Vadmanan, who's an incredible like queer activist who I went to college with, and then a bunch of other friends of mine who are different artists. And then I donate some of when I paint portraits of people, oftentimes I'll donate some of the proceeds that I receive to them, because I want to talk about personhood. I don't want to just use people as like objects in my work. I think it's really important to understand that you're connected to the people that you're representing in a way that can like actually affect their lives. This is one of the more fun ones I did. Can anyone read it? Yeah, nice, awesome. This is a good example of how to get around censorship. This is based in DC. It was for DC Walls. Obviously, it was around one of the times when our reproductive rights were being challenged once again. And I wanted to do something, but didn't want it to be too overt. Also, the festival organizers are always like, you always want to think about the organizers and not get their funding pulled or whatever by doing something crazy without asking. And so I kind of just like worked it in subliminally and asked them for permission, and they're like, yeah, go for it. Like, we'll see who notices. So this one worked out really well. I'm very proud of that and want to do a bit more of that. This, as you all know about what happened several years ago and is still continuing to happen, but not in the media as much, was sort of at the helm of that and doing a lot of fundraising and representation for that in LA. This piece is in LA near my studio and is protected. And this is really when I was like, I like need to be doing activism, whether I feel comfortable with it or not. Sometimes people just want to hear a message represented because you have like a tiny bit of power that lots of other people don't have. A spray can is a very powerful tool, and sometimes you have to use it. Very, very relevant. This is an example of something I wanted to paint but was asked not to in a specific space, which makes a lot of sense because incredibly divisive issue, but it's not like something that it's not something that it will go just anywhere. You really have to think about context and spaces for this kind of thing and like who the audience is and like who needs to see it and what its purpose is. But I was in Texas and I talked to them about painting this on my main wall and was like, we sort of concluded that that wouldn't make sense for that space. And I agreed. But I was like, cool, that's fine. Can I paint lesbians and crawfishes if I can paint this somewhere else, you know, on the back of a silo or something? And they were like, yeah, absolutely, go nuts. But it's something sometimes you just feel this thing like welling up in your body and you're like, I have to say this, I have to figure out how, I have to get it out. This is a very like muralist thing. It's compulsive creation. I was like, I knew I had to do this before I leave town, but where's the best place to do it that's not going to get funding pulled once again or like going to get people like in trouble. So they supported me in that. But I think it's important, even if you feel like you don't have any power, you can still say something and it helps people feel connected in a fight that's much bigger than us. I'm still trying to figure out how, like, where my role is in all of these things, as we all are. But I think oftentimes doing something is better than not. This is a piece I did at Yale University at the Asian American Cultural Center, one of my favorite pieces. Again, just talking about the Asian American diaspora and activism and just like uplifting narratives. This is a piece I did in Quebec last year. I wanted to paint giant gay people, which I guess, again, I'm trying to figure out how to do. I like these like latex fairies, and like Quebec has a really cool kink scene, and I'm thinking about representation and also like keeping things weird because my work is really weird. And sometimes when you start doing more corporate stuff, like you can feel that like draining away. And I always want to like keep it fresh because once again, like if you have to love what you're painting in order to feel passionate about it. You can see this like parking sign like made into the necklace. You always have to think about that sometimes. Hong Kong last year, I wanted to incorporate local architecture into like headpieces to talk about mental health. There's something new for me. Also, it's like you have to paint like there's a lot of restrictions around what you can paint in a space like that because it is China, and so this one's a little bit less like raunchy, I suppose, and which I always love. Like I love hearing from curators what things are cool and what things aren't, because I don't want to offend people, and I think it's important for everybody to know what contextually is okay in a space. A portrait of my ex-partner, who is wearing like a headdress that comes from like a Hong Kong, like Peter Lai's collection of inherited Hong Kong Chinese opera outfits. So it's very contextual in that way. Okay. And lately I've been working on world building more because I was like working very like character focused for many, many years. And I wanted to give myself a bigger challenge. And also because I'm invested in like telling stories, I think I wanted to start developing the world that these characters live in. And so I start painting like environments and backgrounds and stuff. So this is a piece I did in Honolulu that was broke my brain. Like super, super detailed like concept of like a witch doctor character that I had for several years. And it's not as fun. It's hard to paint backgrounds because it's not as like intuitive as painting characters, but I think that setting a scene is really important. A piece I did in Texas where I really tried to like lean into that background painting space and creating an environment that says something about the character that's living in it. And then this piece is sort of like subtly, not so subtly, but sort of more subtly talking about reproductive rights for queer and trans folks, again in Texas. So it's, I don't know, because I'm in my own head, I don't know if any of that is communicated to the viewer, but that's what I was thinking about. Some pieces I did in South Africa late last year, again for a Pangea Seed project. So just like, also I just love I love the context of the spaces these were painted in. And I'm just talking about the kelp forest at this point. And I had to keep things very, very like PG for this because again, murals are still new in South Africa, which I'm totally cool with. A piece I did in Miami that is less PG, but this has to do with the like don't say gay laws that are continuously trying to be passed in Florida. And if we're talking about layout, like I had a whole year that was like full of long flat walls. That was real. Like after a while, I was just like, oh my god, I can't keep doing this. I will paint another snake, I guess. But yeah, trying to figure out how to do a layout for a long, thin wall is always like a challenge. And so I decided I wanted to do my revisionist gay history of the Last Supper and try to figure out what that would look like. So that was the concept behind that one. This is one of my favorite ones too in Osaka, where I got to like, I wanted to paint like an actual cafe that makes you feel like you're sitting there with the characters. And every now and then I just let go of trying to push as much concept into my work as possible and just be like, I want to paint something really fun. And sometimes those turn out better, but I love this piece. Just did that one at Asheville Art Museum. Another sort of like subdued piece where I'm trying to think about lighting instead of smashing as many colors in your face as possible. And then I did this like 2 weeks ago or something, last week, I don't know. It's in Bermuda, and Bermuda's very like does not have many murals, but I also again I didn't know what wall I had until I got there, and so I didn't have anything necessarily super planned, and so I chose to do I wanted to paint a version of one of my magic cards, which are based off of like painting cool merfolk, because in researching the Bermuda Triangle, there's tons of really, really cool mythology surrounding sea monsters and whatnot. And if you give me sea monster as a prompt, I will lose my mind. Here's just some other stuff that I had because this is an old slideshow, but like, you know, we all do tons of other stuff as muralists. Here's a few things that I do. I just had a show opening at Philadelphia. Here's some paintings that I did. On the left is a painting of my partner, Makoto. It's for sale. I do like gig posters, sometimes jacket designs, like apparel, skateboards. I do some tattooing also on the side. You got to make money elsewhere. These are my magic cards. Nerds Unite. Here's an installation I did for one of my gallery shows. Cool sculptural stuff like installations for Coachella. This is my installation at Meow Wolf that I'm really, really proud of. And the whole space is called the Ancestral Crypt and has to do with like fluid identities within Asian altar spaces. Yeah, this one almost killed me. Rotating sculptures, installations, like the ceiling masks glow. This altar has like holograms inside of it that respond to you. This sculpture rotates in like sections, and it has to do with sort of like connecting with the ancestors. Giant sculpture. And that is the end. I'm like have no clue how much time I just took up. Thank you. Thank you. How much time was that? Okay.
Yeah.
Literally went through a time warp.
Any questions? Oh, sorry. Yeah, questions. Come.
But that's why I asked how much time it was.
Oh, no, that was like 30 minutes
Oh,
or
perfect.
so.
Okay.
Yes, perfect. Fantastic. I know I should not be doing this because we're live streaming. I know, I'm sorry. I should be speaking to the mic.
Do you want the mic?
The other one? Any questions? Which is essential. Monica? Yeah. I'll repeat through the mic so that it gets in the live stream. Like I'll repeat your question. Yep.
My question is, at what point in your career did you feel the need to go three-dimensional?
At what point in your career did you feel the need to go three-dimensional?
I think it chose me. That I did not. I just got sort of poached to do Meow Wolf. I don't know how they find me, but they kind of came to me and were like, "Whatever you want to do, you get this whole room. Whatever you want to do." And I was like, "Oh, there's a third dimension." Holograms, like like you're like, whoa, if I get the chance and this budget to like make my world third dimensional, what am I gonna do? And I had never really thought about it before, but now I'm really hungry to do more third dimensional stuff. But it's really difficult thinking about like painting a sculpture. You're like, oh, there's like a back to this thing that I have to figure out how to make look good. But really, really cool, like incredibly empowering situation. Good question. Do I fabricate it all? It was a combo of the two. I live in LA with a lot of incredible maker folks, so I hired a lot of them to build things. Like we built the crown on this character and everything that's on it. We fabricated ourselves. I learned a lot about like making sculptures and I don't know, freeform air and costume making and all that kind of stuff. But the head itself, I outsourced to a brilliant man named Robert Yancey in LA who made the foam head, because honestly, it would have taken me months and months to figure that out and it would look terrible. So I learned a lot about like what it means to do set design in LA, basically. But good question. Did you have a question? Sure. Ooh, how do I deal with political backlash on social media? I wish that I had more political backlash on social media, to be completely honest. I find social media to be so like inane and disconnected these days, and it wasn't so much like a few years ago, because I was really riled up and I was constantly on it, complaining, talking, teaching, connecting. But then it drained me of all my energy doing that. It was a really good time, because I had like Proud Boys coming in and yelling at me and people complaining and like talking and fighting with each other, and I'm always behind the scenes like like I've done it. This is great, I love like trolls. I think it means you're doing something right if you like stoke up conversation. And nowadays it's a little bit like, I think everyone's so tired of like how messed up the world is that like engaging takes so much energy. And so I find it difficult to even like dredge up the energy myself to start conversations, because I'm like, it's horrific what you see on the internet, and know that what's happening in the world. So I think that also the people who follow my work like are huge, by and large, hugely like really liberal people. And so sometimes I worry about my reach, and I'm like, I would like, to be reaching more people who aren't just like in solidarity with me. I'd love to be talking more to like conservative folks and having more conversations about what it means to be queer, or like any of those things. So yes, more controversy is my answer.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, please. Go ahead, Mel. Yeah.
Sure. They ask how long a project takes to execute and where do we get materials. Generally, my murals will take like 2 to 6 days. A mid-sized one could take like 4 days. That large one that I talked through the process with, I think took 6 days. I'm generally very quick because I'm a maniac, and also because it's the only thing I like doing. But also you have to be really like prepared to like be on a crazy deadline. If you're in a different country, something's gonna go wrong. The lift is gonna die, or like you're gonna be out of something. The weather's gonna be crazy. So working fast is a huge boon to someone in this industry. But also holdups are okay too. And then paint, for like generally for festivals, the organizers will provide a paint and you have to make a paint order, and they should have it ready for you and it'll be available when you get there. And usually there's some things missing, but you figure out how to deal with it. Private commissions, you are usually responsible for getting your own paint and getting it there. And there will hopefully be like a budget for that kind of thing. And then, yeah, sponsorships from spray paint companies and stuff are always welcome and really cool. But yeah, and then like there's different paints in different countries. You got to figure out what kind of brand they're going to have and what colors they have and adjust your design based off of that. But yeah, good question. Yes. How do you break into the international market? What I did in the beginning, which I highly recommend for anyone who's capable and able and has the resources. When I was younger, I would like plan a tour myself, which means oftentimes like getting yourself to Europe or another country on your own, and then reaching out to like, I often did it on the internet. I was on Instagram. I'd like, I'm going to be in Berlin this week. Does anyone have like, are there friends? Are there spots to paint? Like, hit me up. And the cool thing I found about this community is that it's an incredibly generous community. It's been very kind to me. There's something about like, there's a kinship to painting that I haven't found anywhere else in the world, because it's such a difficult like thing and a crazy thing to do with your life, that if you meet other people who do the same thing, like generally we take care of each other. And so I used to go on little tours through like South America or whatever and just paint on the streets with friends, make friends, drink beer, hang out, like meet people, and then you build those friendships over time. And it is like a bit of a money sink, but you know, most people like plan trips anyway, so we call them spraycations or whatever. Yeah, put yourself on a little tour, and I still do that sometimes. I'll like, if I get I get an invitation to paint in Vienna in June, so then I'm going to organize a little like Euro trip for myself. Half the things probably won't be paid, half maybe will, but that way you like build community and meet people, and it's a weird thing to do, but it's really cool. uh Advice for emerging artists who want to expand on canvases and walls. Also, hi. It's good to see you. Just do it is like is like the quickest way. I would say. I know it's really hard, at least for canvases. Like you just gotta get a hold of one and like get a hold of the space and do it. Right now is a kind of a difficult time to think about working really big, at least in America. But for murals, I think like sometimes all it takes is getting like that one bigger size wall that people know that you can do it. Applying to festivals, there's a lot of really amazing application or like festivals that have applications now. Street art calls, I think, is on Instagram, is always posting like really good stuff for applications. Hitting up organizers, like having a portfolio prepared to send to people, talking to friends and like being like drop my name maybe, is always really helpful. And then yeah, it's just a question of doing it, and doing it and doing it and having like persistence and being a little bit crazy. But I still apply to things too. It's been like 10 years and I still apply to things. Yeah.
Questions? I think there was one more person first. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
When you were starting, how did you manage to get commission by like with things that you wanted to paint? So like you have a very unique style at the beginning. How did you manage to get that? Like still be painting things that feel like you, but with like restriction.
That's an excellent question, and thank you. I was trying to remind myself to answer that question, because my style is a bit more like weird or like racy or strange. How do I stay true to myself in the beginning and continue to get commissions? This was something that I continue to worry about, and worried about all through my 20s, but refused to compromise. Learn to collaborate and shift and develop different voices and places and be like in tune with the project and what it needed, but also not compromising with what I wanted to make, which means being really tapped into like your personal voice. And also like drawing in your sketchbook and making stuff for gallery shows, because you can paint things that are like less likely to make sense on a street there. And so you're in touch with what you're trying to say. Like, cause I went through a period of drawing like orgies, for like 2 or 3 years. Like that was not something that like I was worried about it. I was like, why is this happening? Why am I doing this? And is this okay? And like I had friends who were like, no, you got to get it out of your system. Like get out of your system, you know? And I think that like hardened my skin to be like, you know, it is okay to do, like no one's going to cancel me. No one's going to like blacklist me by doing this. And so getting through those like weird eras of my life made me realize that, you know, that's what it means to be an artist. And if I think that if you start compromising and shifting your style, you'll feel it in your body and in your spirit. You'll like realize that this isn't working or like something's missing. And I think that following that thread and being like intuitively linked into what you really want to make is really important. But sometimes you do have to compromise and you'll feel it, but it's better. Like also like the more that you put yourself out there, especially if your work is a little bit weirder, like then you become known for that. And sometimes people are looking for that person. They're like, we need someone here to like shake it up. We need to bring someone to Texas to do like the weird thing. And so sometimes you become that person and that's really cool. But you'll miss other opportunities if you're not the safe person. It's just like, just be true to yourself is like as platitudinous as that sounds, it's true.
There was bracket and then 2 here. Yep. Oh, sorry. A bracket. Go. We'll go. Back here. Sorry, I can't see everyone. Go, but
You do so much, well, you do so much work, which is physically very exhausting, and then you're also engaging in all of these activist endeavors, and that as well has a energetic output. And
Yeah.
travel as well has an energetic output. So I'm curious if you have any care practices that allow you to ensure that you can sustain this level of output and level of engagement.
Yeah. That's a really good question. You're asking about burnout, basically. Yeah, which is like very, very real. I think after a decade of working, that's something I'm asking myself much more clearly now than I had before, because I used to be like, oh, I have this infinite source of energy that comes from the universe. And now I'm like, I'm so tired all the time, which is what happens when you age, apparently. I've definitely started thinking about like caring for myself a lot more. I had to like cut out drinking and drugs and partying as much. That was a huge part of it. And that's really hard when you have an industry that like really like shoves that stuff in your face sometimes. And there's like no, I live in a crazy fantasy world. I haven't been to an office or like known what day it was for like 10 years. And so you have to like be really disciplined to stay alive, basically. And so I don't know, I'm just like trying to go running in different cities and like have, stretch and have a care practice and like not eat total crap all the time. I won't say that I'm good at it, but definitely like trying to like giving up certain substances was a huge part of that. And then it's just like taking more time to like pay attention to where you get inspiration, like reading and like doing research and like going out and taking walks and like caring for your brain a little bit more than going out into the city and like trying to get into trouble, although that can be inspirational also. The answer is like that's one of the biggest challenges I have on my plate right now, but is very important. Yeah.
Yeah. There's 2 more here, and then we might be able to take like 2 more.
Sure. Awesome. I used to. It's been a long time. They're asking about painting trains. Safety and privacy. Well, I guess if you're going to paint trains, you're giving up a certain amount of safety in that sense. I was with my mentor, and so I trusted him to take me spaces where I wasn't gonna necessarily get arrested. Because I do paint illegally sometimes, but as my career develops and as my life develops, like I can't really afford to get arrested. So I'm much more sparing about that kind of stuff. But I was painting in like Graz, Austria, which like it was really chill, and I trusted that there weren't like this person has 2 decades of graffiti history under his belt, and so when he takes me somewhere, I trust that I'm not necessarily going to have to run, hopefully. But it's been a long time since I painted a train, and I think it's interesting you ask about privacy in a graffiti setting. I'm not totally sure what that entails, but Yeah, I don't know. I think it always seems like quite a private thing, or like painting in the dark with like a handful of friends. Seems like a really cool private thing, and then all of a sudden it's in the world. That's a really cool question. Did I answer it? Okay. Yeah, of course. Yes. Yes. How long did it take me to get into murals for full time, and was it diversified in the beginning? As I said, when I graduated from college, I basically like I didn't understand. My school taught me nothing about the art world. It's like a tech school, and most schools don't. And so my theory was that if I got enough jobs in different parts of the art world, I could learn enough about it to choose what I wanted to do. So I was literally an intern at DreamWorks. I was an intern at Juxtapose. I was an intern at two different galleries. I was like folding T-shirts in an art store. And on the side, I was trying to get my drawings into galleries. And so, yes, I was diversifying by doing that. And throughout the process of that, I kept getting like fired because I'd be like drawing behind the desk when I was supposed to be like selling T-shirts. And then I realized I didn't want to do any of that stuff. I just wanted to make art. And so I kind of slowly like canceled all those things. And then in the meantime, started trying to paint murals. And I think it's like a big industry, but it's also quite insular once you get in. Like we all know each other, we know of each other, especially amongst femmes. There's not that many of us still, for certain reasons, but like I think I got known a little bit faster because of that, because I was talking about these things, but also because I'm not like, I look different than most of the people who paint graffiti. And so, yeah, that I also like was really, really bad at spray paint, right? In the beginning, because it's really hard to use. And my solution to that was I was like, I'm going to use only spray paint for a whole year, like no brushes, just to get better at it. And I painted a ton of really bad stuff, but I got better faster. So that's a piece of advice that I have. But I would say after like 3 years of basically like faking it, I woke up and was like, okay, I kind of know what I'm doing. And then like, 10 years, I just hit my 10-year mark, and it really is like being in a weird dream. And then you wake up and you're like, I don't know how I'm still alive. Like, I don't know how I'm supporting myself, but it works. It's like a proper career if you do it the right way.
Your work is so amazing.
Thank you.
Inspirational. Can you talk a little bit about your experience being in a very male-dominant, like the graffiti and all that? Have you experienced negativity, or is it more acceptance and kindness, or like do you have a good girl group or part of a girl crew, or like how do you just the male dominance thing? Is it
Yeah. They're asking about male dominance and being in an industry like that. The answer to this is incredibly nuanced and has changed a lot over the years for me, because I've had a lot of like shifts within myself, like gender wise. In the beginning, it was really hard for me because I was constantly on trips in different countries, and I would be the only femme person. And I found that really complicated and confusing for a while. But then you sort of like building, like growing your skin and being like, and then you start being more comfortable hanging out with men. And also some of my best friends are men. Like I have a million like big brother types in my life, which is really amazing. And I'm very grateful for it. But there's lots of like pitfalls of being like an only femme person in a space. Like bunch of like drunk graffiti dudes, like lots of crazy stuff goes down, and you just have to learn how to fend for yourself in some ways, and like who's on your side in some ways. And then you realize that you're all part of the same thing, like no one's really out to get you. And then of course I'm trying to build like a space for like queer folks within my world, my private life and within my world. And like I identify as non-binary, my partner is a trans man, and so there's like a lot of spaces where I don't want to bring him into when it comes to muralism, that people wouldn't understand him. And so I have these very like sectored parts of my life that do different things. And they don't really intersect in a lot of ways. And so you kind of start to learn as you learn yourself more, like who goes where and what things are possible where, whilst also trying to create spaces for certain types of people and like for safety within that world. So I have a lot of different like professional and friend groups that are really, really different. And I'm a different person in different spaces as well, which is really confusing, but I think has to be done. But I have some really tight, amazing women friends, femme friends, queer friends, like trans friends who are all very dear to me, and I'm still trying to figure out how to make them interact. But there's nothing nefarious about being in an industry like this. It's just the way it is. And I feel very grateful for situations like this where I get to speak and represent people like me. And I don't feel threatened or hateful towards the fact that I'm in an industry like this, and I love men. So it's really complicated. I was like, I used to be a lot more angry, and now I'm just grateful and trying to find spaces to like lift other people up.
I think we're gonna. Oh,
Yes.
just one more. Okay, we'll take one more question. Yeah.
Good. That's a very good question. Did I ever have backlash from my family or community or friends? I will say that I'm extremely privileged because my family situation has always been very open, but that comes from hardship. I'm a second generation, half Chinese person. I lost my dad when I was 5. And so my mom, I think, our upbringing, she raised 4 kids on her own after that. And I think that it would have been really different otherwise. But I think that she, having experienced death so in such an intense part of raising her family, she shifted a lot. She used to be like Tiger Mom when I was a kid. And she would yell at me for like, even in middle school, I would get in trouble for like hanging out with girls or like, she was like, "You're gay." And I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm definitely gay." And she changed a lot over the years. And I think losing something so dear to her, she was like, "My family's all I have. So I'm going to be supportive of these people as much, and I don't have a vision for them. I just want to support them." And so she's evolved so much and is such an incredible, incredible person. I think part of the reason that I depict like strong femme people so much is because of her. But she's not your typical like Chinese mom. She's been there for me every step of the way. We're actually really similar compared to my siblings because she used to be a flight attendant. She travels the world around. She comes out to the festivals, will like hang out with me. She's like unpartnered and like just like wants to see the world. And so we're really similar in this way now. And so I am very lucky to have that support. And of course it was hard for her to see me like, get heavily tattooed and like do all this stuff. But I think that we forged a tighter connection, and that's why I like paint for her, like things for her so much. And I'm like, I miss my mom. So I'm very lucky on that front. And I think she's helped my other friends who have like intense Asian parents to learn that they should support their children and what they choose, but also to have a level of integrity to it. Like, I think it'd be different if I was like out doing drugs or like getting like messing up my life. But I'm part of the integrity of my work and talking about heritage and activism and like love and support and friendship has to do with like being like, if I did choose to be this crazy looking artist person, I'm also going to try to like help the world at the same time. So yeah, I'm very lucky on that front.
Thank you so much, Lauren.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's it. Super appreciate that. What a great way to kick off the day. We're gonna do like a 5-minute break or so. Like, can people maybe go to the washroom if they need to, get a cookie, some coffee, some tea, and then we will reconvene in like 5-10 minutes. Okay? Yeah, ideally 5. Thank you. That was awesome.